You know, you simply cannot script it better than what we saw in tonight's game between US versus Mexico. Well, I think maybe the only way that this would have been scripted more is the fact that this would happen in Columbus and it would be happening at Montfort Stadium, or the fact that this game would be taking place in a World Cup and especially in a round of 16 game, that the game would end at 2-0 in favor of the US. But nevertheless, in terms of this game, and obviously I know the talking point of this game is another famous 2-0 moment happening between the US and Mexico, is the fact that I think there's no doubt that out of all three of the game that the US have played against Mexico, this was probably the best one. This was the one that, you know, besides maybe the first 30 minutes of the game where I thought Mexico was the better team, the U.S. absolutely destroyed Mexico the rest of the way, and especially in the second half where they were basically putting a clinic against Mexico. And it was in a point where there was also time where not only the fact they were putting a clinic, but you kind of just had a sense that the dam was eventually going to break. I mean, Mexico was just under so much pressure in the second half. And even though there were times that I was kind of concerned maybe the U.S. wasn't going to break through, when they did break through, yeah, that's when not only there's a lot of relief, but you knew that they were trying to go for a second goal to make that famous scoreline of 2-0. Now, in the first half, and actually before we talk about the first half, I'll talk about the starting 11 in this game. We got Zach Steffen in goal for this one, and this is the first time that Zach Steffen, of course, was in goal for this U.S. team in this World Cup qualifier. And I did hear there was some people that were not happy about it because some people feel like Matt Turner should be in net. But I think at the end of the day, after the performance that Zach Steffen has, yeah, he definitely deserved this spot, and he might have also got the number one spot back in his favor because, you know, I mentioned with Matt Turner, as good as he is with New England this season, you definitely saw that down the stretch Matt Turner did make some crucial mistake, and especially in a game where, you know, I think Zach Steffen definitely has more experience with the U.S. dealing with this game compared to Matt Turner. It was the right choice, I think, in that Greg Berhalter decided to stick with Steffen. But other than that, in terms of the back line, you got DeAndre Yedlin, Walker Zimmerman, Tyler Adams, Anthony Robinson, Yunus Musa, Western McKennie, Ricardo Pepi, Brendan Aronson, Miles Robinson, and then, of course, Tim Way, who there was no doubt that Tim Way, I think if you want to give a man of the match award for this game, it has to be Tim Way. I mean, he had a monster game in this one, and even though he didn't get on the assist or get on the goal scoring sheet, he got on the assist chart once, and I believe he actually got it on twice, because I think if I check right now on the league website, or maybe even the U.S. website, the U.S. men's national team website, I believe he got an assist in that goal that McKennie, of course, scored to, of course, make that infamous 2-0 kind of scoreline. Well, I'll check it again because obviously my laptop that I'm recording this video is relatively slow. Well, actually, saying that now, it seems like I pulled up the website right now, and again, it's being very, very slow right now. But actually, we'll talk about it once we get to that point. But in the first half, one thing I noticed is that it was pretty packed in terms of this game, and we knew that this game, of course, was a sold out, but this was really a game that it definitely looked like it was a sold out, and that it was probably the most packed I've ever seen TKL Stadium this season, and that includes the first game of this new stadium history with FC Cincinnati taking on Inter Miami. But obviously that game, there was a caveat, the fact that, you know, that was still during the pandemic time when teams were limiting their capacity, and if they didn't limit the capacity, there's no doubt that game would have been full, and it would have been the most packed we have seen. But this was, again, the most packed we have seen, and, you know, the crowd definitely, it looked like it was 70-30 in favor of the U.S., although I would say that as the game goes on, I would actually bump that number to 80-20. I mean, we did see some Mexican flag and we did see some green in the crowd, but majority wise, it was actually the U.S. fan. And, you know, again, the whole reason why I think the U.S. Soccer Federation decided to have a game in Ohio is because, you know, they were hoping that maybe that's a ground where it's not really kind of a Mexican hotbed, and that if they would have played in anywhere else, or especially in like a big city, especially in the West Coast, yeah, that would not go well. And this is also the reason why, you know, you will never see when the U.S. play in a World Cup qualifying game against Mexico. As much as I really love to attend a World Cup qualifying game between the U.S. and Mexico, it will never happen around my area because, you know, the area that I live is a Mexican stronghold. If this game was taking place in San Jose and taking place at PayPal Park, it's going to be a pro-Mexican crowd. And if this game was taking place in LA, oh, you bet that it's going to be a pro-Mexican crowd. In fact, that city is basically like the second home for the Mexican national team with how many times that the U.S. played against Mexico at the Rose Bowl and how it was just so much in favor of Mexico. But early on, I thought it was a very cagey start in the first 5 minutes, which again, you know, the atmosphere was absolutely electric, and it just kind of also feel like it was kind of almost a cup final match, and you would be mistaken the fact that this is just kind of a World Cup qualifying match, but that just shows you how intense this rivalry is, and you know, the U.S. fan definitely they brought it, and the American Outlaw definitely brought it early in this game, albeit I did hear those same cringy kind of chant again, and again, you know, I don't know if I said it before, but I hope that the American Outlaw need to kind of maybe think about working on their chants, because some of these chants are just so cringy and so generic, but still, it does add into the atmosphere and make it sound like it was a very hostile crowd. It makes it sound like it's the U.S. is actually playing at home, because, you know, we said before, whenever the U.S. play against Mexico, and especially the last two times when we saw the U.S. play against Mexico in Vegas and in Denver, it definitely did not look like the U.S. was playing at home, even though the game was taking place on American soil. But in the 7th minute, Alvarez puts it into Rosette from long range. That was really the first shot of the game, before Way hits one straight to Ochoa in the 8th minute. I mean, Tim Way, I thought maybe he kind of lost his composure a little bit, because he did kind of had some green to run, and I thought maybe he could have just kept going a little bit before shooting that one. But nevertheless, you know, he had an absolute monster game in this one. Not only had some chances of scoring, but he was basically pulling the string for this U.S. men's national team in this game. But in the 11th minute, Stefan did deny Alvarez from 19 yards out before an Aronson hits one straight to Ochoa. And, you know, I thought the U.S. early on, they looked good on set piece. I mean, there was just multiple times that, you know, John Champion and Taylor Twelveman talk about the set piece definitely in favor of the U.S. And I do have to agree. I mean, when you look at these last couple of meetings, the U.S. definitely have an upper edge toward Mexico in terms of the set piece department. And in fact, I think the 4 goals that they have scored against Mexico, I think all of them have come in the set piece. Well, actually, 3 of the 4 games in the set piece. I mean, if you want to count a penalty kick that Pulisic, of course, scored in that CONCACAF Nations League final that give the U.S. the winning goal in that one to make it 3-2, then yeah, you would say that the U.S. of course have scored all their goals on the set piece. And I thought, again, Mexico, you know, coming into this game, I think Tata Martino also said that, you know, this is a thing that Mexico will need to work on against the U.S. because they know that they don't have the advantage on that. And early on, it definitely didn't look like they had they learned that lesson, and that they still had some trouble in terms of dealing with those set pieces. Though I will say that throughout this game, they definitely did a much better in terms of dealing with the set piece, and especially dealing with those dangerous corner coming into the box compared to those 2 games that they play in Denver and in Vegas. Now, in the 19th minute, Stefan absolutely robbed Hervin Lozano there as he gone through on goal there. That was really the first big test that Zach Steffen had to make. And, you know, Steffen early on, he definitely looked a little bit shaky, but a lot of that has to do with him, you know, playing in a big game like this, and knowing the fact that, you know, even though during his time with Man City, he hasn't really been playing a lot, because, you know, obviously Ederson is the main goalkeeper for Man City, and the only time Zach Steffen can have some chances to start over Ederson is probably in lesser kind of competition. So, you know, he definitely had those jitter early in this game, even with the experience with the national team, but he quickly kind of shake off that jitter by making that good save on Chucky Lozano. And I think that also kind of give him some confidence too, because we talk about how goalkeeper, you in a game where you might be a little bit nervous coming in, if you can just make a big save like what Stefan did in that robbing Lozano as he went for on goal, it would definitely give him some confidence that, yeah, he's definitely can make some good save and also kind of calm himself. That now it seems like he has his game face on for the rest of the game. Now, there was a lot of possession early for Mexico, as I thought the U.S. was having problem in terms of just string some passes in the midfield. I don't know why I said string some passes on possession. Well, technically it is true. They just could not keep possession, which is kind of frustrating. But I thought early on, maybe they were trying to give possession to Mexico early because they wanted to try to go on the counter and trying to basically attack those back line, which they mentioned before. This Mexican back line was kind of a little bit short-handed and a little bit inexperienced, so the U.S. was trying to take advantage of that by playing on the counter attack and trying to attack that inexperienced Mexican back line. But in the 30th minute, Corona, he should have scored here. I mean, he missed an absolute sitter from 10 yards out, and I thought the U.S. got really lucky in terms of the fact that Corona wouldn't bear that one in. But then in the 38th minute, Musa puts it wide from 14 yards out before Robinson hits it wide from close range, and that's Anthony Robinson, that is. I forgot to put, in terms of whenever I mention Robinson, since there's two of them in the U.S. men's national team, I forgot to mention, which Robinson it is, but in this moment, it was Anthony Robinson, the one that hits it wide from close range. But there was no doubt the U.S. was pressing late to get that lead before halftime. There was a shout for a penalty from the U.S. that was not given. By the way, another thing that was a big talking point in this game was the referee, because, anytime when there's a U.S. versus Mexico game, that the referee has to be in the center of attention. And we'll definitely get to another controversial moment that we saw in this game between the U.S. and Mexico involving the referee. But we do head to halftime, scoreless between both of these teams. But in the second half, this is when the U.S. really started to press and trying to get that goal. Ochoa absolutely robbed McKennie from 10 yards out. I mean, McKennie, he knows that he should have done better, as he was wide open there from 10 yards out. But Ochoa make a great save to rob him there. Musa then hits it wide from long range in the 50th minute as the U.S. was pressing early to try to get the opener in the second half. Pepe then whiffs a chance from 5 yards out. I thought Pepe could have had a quiet night in this game, and I think some people mention of the fact that maybe this game was a little bit too big of an occasion for him, because you gotta remember, Ricardo Pepi, as talented as he is, and as much as he definitely have a lot of potential to be such a great player, he's still only 18 years old, and this is definitely probably the biggest moment of his life, playing against Mexico, and in some way kind of personal too, because Ricardo Pepi, he had that big decision of whether or not should he choose the U.S. or Mexico, and there's no doubt that growing up he was definitely cheering for Mexico, and I think that kind of caught a lot of people attention when he decided to choose the U.S. or to represent the U.S. rather than represent Mexico when he cheered in his childhood life. So he definitely maybe played with a chip on his shoulder in this game too, and maybe that's kind of argument that maybe this wasn't as big as an occasion as it is, because it's kind of personal when you're playing against the team that you cheer for, and sometimes you just gotta have to put those feelings away and hope that maybe you can of course beat the team that you cheer during your childhood. But there was no doubt that I also kind of wrote the U.S. was having a ton of prime opportunity. Like, Mexico was very flat to start their second half, but I also thought that we've seen this before, when the U.S. don't capitalize on their opportunity, is it going to come back to haunt them? Now, thankfully, it didn't. But then, as we get to the 67th minute, this is when the big controversy of this game happened. When up to that point, there wasn't actually a lot of chippiness that happened in this game. I mean, sure, there was definitely some shithousery that Mexico tried to make, and some players decided to kind of fake injury, as we usually see in this rivalry. But we haven't really had a point where it started to really boil over, and you started to see both teams really get at each other, until in the 67th minute, when basically this all started with Rodriguez and Aronson, and I believe Aronson was down on the ground, and Rodriguez decided that, yeah, he's going to take part, be that Mexican player that, as tradition, in every U.S. versus Mexican or Mexico game, there's going to at least be one Mexican player decided to either choke a U.S. player and gets away with it, or decide to put his hands in his face and gets away with it. And this was the moment. I mean, Rodriguez clearly basically poked Aronson there. Now, I will say this, Brandon Aronson, I think he did kind of made a little bit of a meal out of that, but I guess maybe that's just Aronson trying to give Mexico a little taste of their own medicine, because Mexican player does that. I mean, they tend to shit house a little bit with the way that maybe they got poked and then they started roll on the ground a little bit. So I'm just hoping that maybe that will give Rodriguez a red card. But what Brendan Aronson don't know is the fact that, yeah, it only works when Mexican players try to do that. It doesn't work the other way around. And again, as much as I know there was a lot of frustration, and I of course was also looking at the match thread on Reddit, not on the US soccer page, because I want to stay away from that, because that one tends to be really toxic. But I look at the league's Reddit match thread, and a lot of people were angry about CONCACAF about this, and I don't blame them, because we've seen this before with CONCACAF making some incompetent call, and there's no doubt that, you know, that should have been a red card in any ways. I mean, in MLS, that is definitely a red card. I mean, they would have gone to VAR to look at it, and we'll agree the fact that that is clearly hands to the face. And anytime when you have a hands to the face, especially deliberately does it like what Rodriguez does to Aronson, it's a red card. But because of the fact that CONCACAF does not have VAR implemented into this system, and I like how Taylor Twellman kind of argue and say, well, maybe the center ref didn't see it. And I'm like, you know, he was literally right in front of it. I mean, I get it. I get you of course continue your rant about how VAR should be implemented, but you kind of also trying to maybe contradict yourself by saying the referee isn't there, when in reality the referee was literally right in front of the situation. And actually I wouldn't say more like contradict, but more like he trying to make an excuse to the referee, like, yeah, you know, he wasn't in front of it, even though of course that was the case. But nevertheless, besides all that chaos that we saw, eventually in the 75th minute, this is when the big moment happened, as Christian Pulisic, who else, scored from Way to give US a 1-0 lead. I mean, it's only fitting that Tim Way, having a monster game, would get on the assist chart. And then Christian Pulisic, who has really been probably now the most hated player for the Mexican national team, he would of course come off the bench and score the goal there to give the US a 1-0 lead. And again, that was a goal that really gave a lot of relief to US fans, because they were just hoping that eventually, with all that pressure that they were putting on Mexico, the dam is going to eventually break. And it definitely broke there, with the US finally getting that 1-0 lead. In fact, they even show a stats that the shots was 9-0 in favor of the US in the second half. Like, the US completely took over the second half, while Mexico was just completely looking completely flat and looked very uninspired in the second half. But I will say this, is that after that goal was scored, the momentum kind of did start to shift back to Mexico a little bit, and that, you know, the US, I think they were being a little bit too casual, thinking that they can just walk out of here with a 1-0 victory, as Mexico was able to push for the equalizer. But that doubt all came to an end in the 86th minute. And again, you know, we knew that, you know, the only way that this game will be more fitting is that the scoreline will be 2-0, and McKennie basically made sure of that. And again, I'm going to just double check here on the league website to make sure that McKennie goal, I'm pretty sure McKennie goal was also assisted. No, it's actually unassisted, which I'm kind of surprised on that, because I'm pretty sure that goal, of course, was assisted. But, you know, he scored there unassisted to give the US that famous scoreline of 2-0. And you knew that when 2-0 happened, yeah, the US fans realized it, and 2-0 was just raining out loud in the supporter section and the American Outlaws section. And yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like a little banter that, and just kind of remind Mexico that it happened again. Looks like the US is going to win this one 2-0. Now, in the 90th minute, the U.S. did had a man sent off, as Miles Robinson, of course, gets his second yellow card. Now, I thought that this yellow card, you know, on one hand, I can understand why the referee gave a yellow card on that, because it definitely looked like Miles Robinson stopped a promising attack that Chucky Lozano was going through. But at the same time, when I look at it closely, it felt like Lozano kind of embellished that a little bit. It almost like he kind of sold that one a little bit so that the referee can give Robinson a second yellow card. And I also think that contact like that, maybe the referee would have given Robinson maybe his last warning before he actually goes into the book. But nope, it's that he gone into the book for the second time. And also at that point, I wasn't surprised that was the case, because it was once again pretty clear that the referee was against the U.S., as they always do in this rivalry. And yeah, it's very disappointing the fact that it happened again. And now Miles Robinson, and with a couple of other players this U.S. team that is also going to be suspended because of yellow card accumulation. They will miss that next game against Jamaica on the road. But in the second minute of stoppage time, Ferreira did try to make it get 3-0 as he went through on goal, but he hits the side netting. And in some way, low key, I was kind of glad that Ferreira didn't score that, because it would have ruined what would have been a great storyline of once again the U.S. beating Mexico by a final score of 2-0. And in the end, that of course is the score in this one. As the shots in this one, 18 shots for the 8 that Mexico has, 5 shots on goal for the 4 that Mexico has, 7 shots off target for the 4 that Mexico has, 6 shots that was blocked for the none that Mexico has, and possession-wise, 51% possession compared to 49% possession that the U.S. has in this game. And like I said, what a big victory this is for the U.S. and in a game where it's been hyped up a lot that this is really the measuring stick for the U.S. and especially the measuring stick for Greg Berhalter. He definitely had passed the measuring stick with flying color. And this is also another game that have just shown that the U.S. Throughout this World Cup qualifier, one thing that I do give Greg Berhalter a lot of credit is that he has done a good job in terms of making adjustment in the second half, because he definitely made some adjustment here in the second half that really just kind of give the U.S. the advantage and really just make Mexico look very flat throughout the game. And it's also not the first time we've seen his halftime adjustment making this team better in the second half. In fact, right now, pretty much all the goals except one. Except for the one that the U.S. of course scored against Costa Rica in the first half, all their goal basically have came in the second half. So this team is basically a second half team. And I think throughout the broadcast, I think Terry Twellman mentioned of the fact that he's kind of frustrated of seeing this team always be that second half team, and why can they show that urgency in the first half. I think maybe the reason why that is the case is because with a young team like this, young players, I do feel like usually they do take a while to, of course, get themselves into the game and get a feel out of this game. And this was just kind of one of those games when you have such a big occasion like that, it's gonna take time to get a feel out of it. But I think what's great about this U.S. team is that eventually they did kind of figure it out, and so far it seems like they've mostly figured it out, especially in the second half of this game. And I just also feel like, at the end of the day, it's better to be a second half team than it is to be a first half team, especially if you're a first half team. Basically, you do well in the first half and then you kind of slack off in the second half, and that's when we see teams kind of blow leads late because they were not being a good second half team. But with this U.S., it could be good, the fact that you could be a second half team, because if you head into the second half with a scoreline 0-0, or even if you're trailing in that game, you can easily, of course, come back from that deficit and able to win the game. But again, as good as this victory is, I've also said before where the U.S. cannot just be complacent after this game. Like, they know that they still have another big game in this international window against Jamaica, and I'm really hoping that I know they're going to be a little bit shorthanded too with players that's going to be suspended in that next game. But I really hope that game they're not going to play like they did against Panama, where that was a game where I just thought that they kind of underestimated Panama, and they were made to pay when they underestimated Panama there. And this is going to be the same case with Jamaica, where yes, even though there's going to be no fans in attendance in that game, which will definitely help the U.S. that they don't have to walk into a hostile environment in an away CONCACAF World Cup qualifier game, but Jamaica is going to be up for this game. And especially with all these kind of teams that is in Central America or Caribbean region, when they do play against the cream of the top team in the CONCACAF region, that they're going to be up for it. So hopefully the U.S. are not going to underestimate Jamaica and not just use this game as a huge celebration and forgot that they also got to play against Jamaica and need to get 3 points, because as great as this victory is, this is only one win in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifier. And in the CONCACAF World Cup qualifier, you want to continue to eventually grind your way through it and trying to get points, not only at home but also on the road. And so far the U.S. have been doing a good job in terms of that, and I believe at this time they're now actually at the top of the standing in the World Cup qualifying region in CONCACAF. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this game. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.